In the traditional courtroom, we have the revolving door. We have a lot of numbers. There's a number on their case file. There's a number of offenses that they've committed in the past. And they're a number. They're not a person. We've had the war on drugs. We've incarcerated a lot of people. We haven't made a difference in our society by doing those things. I've been doing this for 15 years and it just doesn't work. We need to do something different.
One of the frustrations that judges have is when somebody appears in front of them and it's pretty clear that mental illness is a significant part of what is at play. Locking them up in jail does not do anything to solve their mental illness, and we recognize that. And they sit in jail for whatever time we've decided they need to be in jail, and when they come out, at best, they are where they were when we put them in there, and more typically, they've decompensated. So they are in a worse position with their mental health, and which means they are more likely to commit crimes.
So my upbringing was really good. I had a good upbringing up until about the age of 17, when my mental health had a total collapse. And I didn't have anyone that really understood. And I didn't have health insurance. So my option was to self-medicate. So very quickly I became an opiate addict. My mental health suffered over time. I watched the people I grew up with die and become sickened by the same thing. I watched my dad, who was my hero, become sicker and sicker until I watched him pass away. That was the hardest point in my life. And then being absolutely strung out the day that he did. I didn't know where to go from there. I didn't know.
What happened is that as a society, years ago, we decided we don't have the money, or we're not going to put the money into the mental health system in this case specifically. So rather than warehouse people in big institutions, we thought it was best therapeutically and for other reasons to release them back to their local environment, and in many cases that meant to the street. And so we had a whole bunch of people who were no longer being seen by anybody to address their mental health issues and were left to their own devices. And those folks, not unreasonably, a bunch of them ended up committing crimes and ending up in the criminal justice system. And when they end up here, the typical tools that we have, which are jail, fines, those things don't change their behavior.
I felt like I was on a burning building and I was being forced to die in the fire or jump. And that's how I viewed life in my 20s. I didn't have any friends anymore. I had predators. Those were the people in my life. They were predators. The day my dad passed away, I tried to kill myself unsuccessfully. And it's not romantic watching someone you love become ill. It's not like they portray in the movies where someone becomes ill and you give them a kiss and they move on. It can be very harrowing and painful to watch someone you love become sick and deteriorate. I ordered drugs off the dark net. I shot up throughout the day. I used drugs like PCP, Cocaine, crack, meth, heroin. Opiates were my drug of choice, but I liked to shoot heroin and meth, which killed my fiance. It was a speedball. It was heroin and crack, cocaine. That was the day in the life. And then it was coming up with money to feed that habit. Because the one thing I didn't want to do was feel anything. Because it was too much. It was too much pain.
There's been a shift over the years from punishment to treatment. We can punish people all the time and we can continue to have the highest level incarceration in the world, or we can figure out how to get people back on their feet and get people to be able to have productive lives.
Therapeutic courts are alternative courts to the normal way of doing business. So in therapeutic courts, we try to work in a more positive way. We try to encourage them to make positive choices in their life. We try to provide them resources or access to resources to make it easier for them to make these types of decisions. And in the end, we get somebody who hopefully is healthier, and in being healthier, they are much less likely to recidivate, and that makes all the rest of us in the community more safe.
Therapeutic courts really started with the drug court programs and superior courts. And so drug courts work with felons that have drug-related offenses. But we're trying to get to those folks before they get to a felony. We don't want somebody to commit a felony in order to be able to get the services that they need.
I remember pieces of my arrest. I remember having drugs on me. I remember my pants falling down in downtown Olympia because I wasn't wearing a belt. And being so intoxicated that I wasn't even aware of it. I didn't have a clue of where I was at. I thought I was in North Carolina at the time. That arrest saved my life. That arrest forced me to stay grounded in Washington State as opposed to go back to someone that would enable me. It forced me to figure out how I was going to get through this arrest, and it was life or death.
A lot of the root issues that we see with the folks that come into our community court, our therapeutic court, is alcohol and drugs. We're seeing a significant impact of the drugs on our people that appear in our court. And that's not just here in Olympia, that's everywhere in the state of Washington, and actually everywhere in the nation. The opioid epidemic is hit hard here and is hit hard everywhere. And sometimes we have folks that have mental health issues that need to be addressed, and some of those mental health issues are also drug-induced mental health issues.
People in mental health court, when they come in, they have their diagnosis, their mental illness that they are dealing with. And for folks with mental illness, that can be such a lonely journey. I'd mentioned previously that for some of them, they've been written off by their family. Their family's frustrated by the illness that causes the behaviors that they don't understand. Or maybe they just don't have family around, or maybe their family is totally dysfunctional. And a lot of them see the time in court as their family time. And there's people who care about them, people who listen to them, people who will talk to them about things that have nothing to do at all with why they're in court, but or we're showing interest in things that they may be interested in themselves. It helps fill the gap for them.
What it would have ended up happening in my eyes in a regular court system is I would have been incarcerated, and I would have been incarcerated for a period of time and let back out to my own devices. That's not a system that's effective, in my opinion. The way that I see traditional court systems work is they don't. They don't seem to work for the individual that is struggling with their mental health or with substance use disorder. I entered mental health court and expected a normal criminal justice system to take place. And instead, I was blown away by the transformation that occurred over the next 2 years. Because I had a willingness and a passion and dedication to remain clean, but I didn't have an internal GPS system. I didn't know where I was going to go or how I was going to do it. I didn't know how to get from point A to point B. I could barely ride the bus.
You indicate that in Olympia on June 12, 2019, you took some merchandise from Tractor Supply without intending to pay for the items. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, and that on October 10, 2019, you took some merchandise from Target without intending to pay for those items. Is that correct? So most therapeutic courts are opt-in. The individual has to decide that they want to join that therapeutic court, that they want to put in the effort, because there's a lot more effort being involved in a therapeutic court than there is just going through the normal process. I will find a sufficient factual basis as to both charges. I'll find that your pleas were made knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily, and therefore I'll enter findings of guilty based on those pleas.
When somebody comes into one of these therapeutic courts, their obligation is a 2-year obligation. So how that works is they come in, and in order to get into the court, they're going to have to plead guilty to a crime, and whether there's some negotiation as to what that crime can be, but they will plead guilty.
All right, so you understand you're entering pleas of guilty to 2 counts of theft in the 3rd degree. Okay, and you understand that by entering those pleas of guilty, you give up the legal rights that are contained in the plea form.
And when they do that, I then defer the sentence.
Okay, and did you review the recommendations that you and Diana and Rocio went over?
Yes.
Okay, and you understand I do not have to follow those recommendations, and I can impose up to 364 days of jail and a $5,000 fine on each charge.
Yes.
Okay. So now we've got through the normal process. So welcome to community court.
Typically, we will see about 6 people in an hour, so that averages out to about 10 minutes per person. On my normal criminal calendar, I will see anywhere between 30 and 50 people in an hour. So you can tell the difference right there in how much time we spend with these folks. And you'll also notice the informality. So everybody's on a first name basis. It really helps dial down the pressure and the tension for folks. And when you do that and you get them engaged and talking, you can make a lot more progress than when they come into a court fearful or anxious about what might happen to them. When they are not coming in for their weekly hearings, they are meeting in the interim with their care coordinators or the social workers that we have on staff.
We'll ask the judge to remove that one requirement.
Yeah, and he'd love to see you.
He would like to see you. We love seeing you.
Oh, that's so nice.
And those care coordinators are the essence of the program, because they are working with these folks to make sure they are actively involved in their treatment obligations. Some of them will have substance abuse treatments. Some of them will have domestic violence treatment. And then we're also working with them on obstacles they have in going to treatment, in meeting their obligations. So, for example, if they're sleeping in the woods, it's awfully hard to get into treatment on a regular basis and not miss the UA call that you get. All these folks are UAing regularly. Those are things we're really trying to work with them on to improve the likelihood that they will succeed here.
They provided resources in the form of information to help navigate systems that are really challenging.
We did have the system showing that they did suspend her Social Security. She's not going to be receiving her Social Security.
Right. So it's very recent, and it could have been that she, as she said, she entered this rehab.
Right.
So as they move through this process and we provide these resources to them, and they are meeting regularly with their care coordinators and staying in touch with them, they're beginning to develop the independence that it's going to take for them to do well once they are finished with the courts. We're really trying to build that into this process so that when they graduate from here, even though we're no longer here for them as an accountability piece, they built in their own accountability because we've really lengthened the time between hearings, and they are, on their own to hold themselves accountable.
It was probably a month into mental health court. I had stable housing, and my fog in my brain was starting to clear. Every week, I was being told what I was doing right. I considered those individuals to be my friends, that place to be my home, because other than my brother and my mom, that was the unit I had that told me that I was worthy of being loved, worthy of all of the things that I wanted to achieve. And that burning building disappeared. I had my life back. It wasn't a game over anymore. I found passion in something. I have the honor, and it's humbling, of becoming a certified peer counselor. And my plans consist of getting my master's in social work. My graduation was really cool.
Without accessibility to this program, I would either be in jail or I would be dead.
I walked into court in a room full of 40 people, and I was told that you did it. And I didn't need to be told that I did it. I knew that I did it.
Without warm faces and resources to facilitate getting back a life worth leading, I would be dead.
I stood on the shoulders of giants to get to where I was at that
Now I'm
point.
looking at a group of people after this 24 months, and I'm without words.
And those giants stood in that room. They stood in that room celebrating my achievements that I had made, that we had made.
Because 10% of this was done by me. And it's clear that my God expresses themselves through collectives of people. And thank you. And I'm sorry.
It was a dream. It was a dream because I knew that my life had come together again. And all of these people were there to celebrate that. How cool. How cool. How cool to have everything I wanted back, everything that I thought was lost back over 2 years, and have everyone that either participated or not participated in my program there to celebrate that for 30 minutes.
His graduation was a great scene because the officer who arrested him came. And I remember Cody turning to him and said, I want to thank you because this is the first time I've seen you since you arrested me, but I was naked, and I remember you came up and you gave me a blanket. He said that was so important. And it's little things like that that make a huge difference.
I felt redeemed. I felt cleansed. I felt like that was the beginning of my life. I go over that memory in my head quite often of that graduation.
In recidivism, which is the likelihood that somebody will recommit another offense, the normal population of criminal defendants has a recidivism rate of over 50%, and somewhere between 50 and 60% is sort of standard. And that means more than half the people that we see on our criminal calendars, once we're done with them, they are likely to commit another crime. In the therapeutic courts, that recidivism rate drops down to somewhere between 12 and probably 20%, averaging right about 15%. So that is statistically a really significant drop in the recidivism rate for participants in the therapeutic courts.
It's not only saves money in the long run, it does cost money to go through the programs, but it saves money in the long run. It saves jail beds, it saves the community, and people are not out there committing crimes again, and so it makes a huge difference. In the community court and therapeutic court process, we really change those lives.
If the public wants a system that works, and it works not only for the public itself, but for the individuals that are being constantly incarcerated, then they need to start exploring different options.
What we're seeing with therapeutic courts is judges all across the country are recognizing the benefit that these courts give to their communities. We were one of the earliest mental health courts in the state of Washington. There are now, I believe, somewhere around 20 mental health courts in the state of Washington.
My passion is community court. I've been doing this almost 15 years and have not seen changes in people that I've seen in the last 3 years with the community court. I get to know the individuals instead of the number.
Kevin is ready to graduate today. He's been a rock star.
I've had individuals that I see in crisis and think, wow, this is somebody that's really hurting and somebody that's not going to be able to get through this program. And then at the end, we see that they not only graduated the program, they've got their GED, they've got their license back, they've got a job. It's amazing to see the changes in life.
Graduation tree.
We don't need to have masters in social work in order to understand the difficulties that people bring to court when they suffer from mental illness. What we have to have is just some degree of humanity, which allows us to recognize that and then use our gut to figure out how can we best respond.
I'm pretty lucky. I'm pretty fortunate. From somebody who was homeless and shooting up on the streets to someone who now is looking at an eventual course that would lead to a master's in social work, sincerely wants to help other people from sincerely wanting to help themselves. It's pretty